Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Lost Sheep Podcast. I'm Nazario Pangallo here with
Cole Bissett.
and
Evan Aber.
welcome back, folks, for episode number 53. That was nifty, Cole. Way to get back in time there. He skirted out. I can see his footage, everyone, while the intro music is playing, and he skirted out of there for a second. I did not think he was going to make it back in time. Evan, what about that play from Cole right there?
He's always on his feet. I will say just go with the flow type of guy, just adapting to the situation, whatever technical difficulties are thrown at him.
Yeah, but he's always, one of those first one in, last one out type of guys. Just do whatever it takes. High motor.
First one in. Last one out, maybe. First one in, debatable.
Cole, what do you got over there? Any response?
Well, Evan called me this morning and was like, hey, we recording today? And I was like, yeah, I'm awake. Let's go. And to be completely truthful here, Evan called me and I was absolutely passed out on my pillow.
I was like, I'm going to call this guy and I know he's asleep, but as soon as I call him, he's going to lock in the hardest he's ever done before. He's going to be like, oh yeah, I've been awake for hours.
So I scrambled, and by scramble, I scrambled because I had to make the Canvas quote and I had to put my mic and everything up. So everything was kind of crazy, and then I had technical difficulties on top of that. So life's great, but made it. I was absolutely dead last night, so I just slept straight through my alarm. That's literally what happened. But
yeah, guys, we were supposed to start recording 40 minutes ago. So Look at us, 2 minutes into the episode. Should have started 40 minutes ago.
Nazario, again, I once again implore you as our segue into our sports podcast that we're gonna one day open. Do you want to talk about our recent sports going on? And Cole, I'll factor you into this one too. You're over here because there's some interesting news I want to run past you. But thoughts on, and we'll keep this short because to keep in our 5 minutes. Thoughts on the Edmonton Oilers blowing a 3-1 lead and the Stars scoring 5 in the third period, and then thoughts on recently announced SGA MVP last night.
Well, last night, I should pull up the picture. I wish I would have thought of this before, but there's just a picture of Tyrese Halliburton going like this. The choke image, and we should have pulled that up for both the NHL and the NBA game last night, because as you talked about, 3-1 lead for the Oilers, they fall apart. Then the Knicks up by 17 points with four minutes left, up by 14 points with 2.5 minutes left. Yeah, both of those leads fell apart, and both teams lost. And I was actually playing Rocket League with Cole, and I left my television. What is going on right now, Cole?
What?
Live with StreamYard?
What?
StreamYard live show.
Interesting.
What's happening?
I don't know. But I was watching the Knicks game. I was like, oh, this game's over. So I come to play Rocket League with Cole, and I get a notification on my phone that the Pacers have cut it to like a 5-point lead. So I turn it on my phone, and then if anyone watched, at the last buzzer, Tyrese Halliburton shoots the shot, and it hits the back of the rim. Cole and I are in a Rocket League game at the moment. So it hits the back of the rim. I'm like, oh, that's a miss. And so I turn back to the Rocket League game. And then eventually my eyes go back to the basketball game, and they're just celebrating. And I'm like, what? He made the shot? And I completely just missed it. And then SGA, congratulations to him. I can't stand the Thunder or him. I don't like watching them play. It's bad. So.
Okay, and Cole, my tidbit for you.
You got 30 seconds, Cole.
Include us in this sports section. Yesterday, news out of the U.S. men's national team camp that Christian Pulisic will be sitting out the Gold Cup this summer as an
along
injury.
with Yunus Musa.
Yeah, as an injury prevention technique. What do you think?
15 seconds. Go, Cole.
I mean, I don't feel like it's that big of a deal because the goal.
Oh, and Cole has frozen, ladies and gentlemen. But I agree with Cole. I don't think it's that big of a deal. And that the World Cup's in a year. He needs to be rested and ready to go for that. Ladies and gentlemen.
Cole
is back. Okay, Cole is back. Cole,
Okay, my
I
Wi-Fi
finished off your
literally just
thoughts.
crashed. My Wi-Fi just crashed.
So-
What did you say?
I said that it's not that big of a deal, and he just needs to be ready for the World Cup next year.
Yeah, because the Gold Cup, while it's important for Americans, and for us, it really is not that big of a tournament. So it's okay. I don't think it's that big of a deal. We have enough talent on our team that I think we can suffice. Obviously, it isn't the same since he's kind of our like playmaker, ball carrier, but we'll just see how it goes.
The boys don't hate losing. The boys don't hate
They don't.
losing. Quote Shorzy. The boys do not hate losing.
All right, folks. Well, thank you for coming to our sports podcast. We'll check you guys out next week. Now let's jump into our previously scheduled and intended podcast. And our quote for this week, actually, shout out. We know Cole Bissett took a little bit to get ready for this week, but dude had the quote, the Shepherd of the Week, and the Practical Prayer Practice. So shouts to him. And if you're on visuals, you can see our graphic for our quote, which Cole has once again provided, and is from Sir Isaac Newton. If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. One more time from Isaac Newton, and then whichever one of you wants to take it. If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. I'm throwing up the softball. Who wants to take a swing?
Evan, you want to, or you want me to go?
Absolutely. I would love to. I absolutely love this quote. So in our group chat, I think we probably have like a queue of 40 quotes that's just kind of
Whoops.
there.
Sorry about that. Oh,
You can-
nope, failing completely. Cole,
we have like a queue
Cole,
of like
help.
40
Cole, help.
quotes. that
There we
just
go.
kind of
There we go.
Goes through like somebody will put a quote and then like nobody will respond to it. Somebody will put a quote and respond to it, and we'll be like, oh, whatever. Like this is for a future episode. And so when Cole originally put this up, I was like, man, I love this quote. Because just as like a science person, this is so important to me. But also, it has a lot of just like meaning also towards the church. And I think Cole mentioned a few things in our pre-planning about this, about the directions we could take this. But I think like for me, a lot of this means like mistakes that we've made. When I see this quote, I always think about like, especially in chemistry and biology, which is, kind of my background, now an official college graduate in both. Woo woo. But like, we go further by the mistakes we make and learning from those mistakes. And so oftentimes I think of the mistakes we made, the errors that we've gone through as kind of those shoulders of giants. That we don't have to do those anymore. We can see past those. We can get farther than they ever did.
Yeah, Evan, kind of what you're talking about, you're reminding me of my History and Systems Psychology 370 class. And at the very beginning of that, we talked about like scientific progress. What does that mean? What is the goal of scientific progress? And then also reminded me of like when you are testing something and trying to figure out whether it's useful or whether it works, you like want to falsify it. You want to see, can it be proven false? All these different things. That's kind of reminding me of like what you're saying. And all those things have to happen. And what does that do? Does it help the person that's actually doing all of that work? Maybe. Like eventually, hopefully that does help them. But more or less, it's going to help people in the future, right? Like if someone does an experiment, someone's going to read that research later, hopefully, and be like, oh, once they've had this new lens, this new perspective on it, they can learn from it and they can do something new with that. And so just building on top of each other and just in that basic way, not only from science, as Evan talks about with his chemistry and his biology, but like myself with psychology, it's very much what it's about. And I texted Cole the other day about what it's going to be like with our 3 titles for our podcast of who each of us are. Evan is like our scientific philosopher, Cole is our definer, and then I'm like our psychologist. So we have this like interesting dynamic going, which I think is going to give some cool perspectives on what we have here, but perfectly for the quote. Like we are all working on standing on the shoulders of different giants. Evan, with all your what I just talked about with your science. Cole, I mean, he's got this engineering brain, but he's also learned a lot from his high school with his monks, and then he loves his definitions. Like that's what Cole, the lens that Cole sees through, and then me with the psychology. So it's going to be very interesting to see how the podcast develops in that way through like the way that this quote describes.
Yeah, definitely. I think having the ability for us all to be together like this and record a podcast kind of gives us a chance to grow off of each other, like you're saying, and it's really awesome because I think as time's gone along, going back and looking at all the episodes, like last night I went back and poked a little bit because I was curious. I was like, were we really as bad as I remember? And I think content wise it was good, some good stuff. But I can literally see our podcast get better and better and better and better as times come along. And to right now, like the level at which we can record is a lot more professional, and it's really, really neat. And then having Evan on the podcast, bringing another level, bringing the psychological, bringing the philosopher level, like we have deeper conversations, and it's been really great. Like I remember sitting there, and I think I might have even told this to you, but like during discipleship, I was like, I wish our podcasts were like our discipleship conversations. Right? Because I feel like our discipleship conversations can go so well. And so what did we do? We brought on our discipler. So that's how that solution was made right there. So yeah, definitely a good thing and a good way to go about this. But,
Matthew McConaughey. Sorry, Cole, to cut you off. Matthew
Go for it.
McConaughey has a quote. Can anybody guess what I'm about to say? He's got like a few famous quotes.
Life is a series of commas, not periods.
No, that would have been a
Iconic.
good
That's
pull, though. That would have
iconic.
been a great pull.
Episode 1 right there.
Yes, that is episode
But-
1.
What I was gonna say is, he has this speech, and I think it's at an award show where he basically talks about like somebody asked me who my hero was, and when they asked me, I didn't know who my hero was. Like I said, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure, whatever. And so they said, okay, I'm going to ask you again in a year. And they came back and they asked him again in a year. And he was like, I'm still not sure. He said, okay, I'm going to ask you again in a year. And the third time he asked him, he was like, well, I thought about it. And my hero is me in 10 years because it gives you constantly something to chase. And I think like with this podcast, especially what we've seen is kind of that like evolution of, our model being us in 15 episodes, in 20 episodes, in 30 episodes. Because, we have to accept that we're not going into uncharted territory. Like there's people that do this, but also, we bring a very unique perspective of being college students, being young people immersed in a Catholic community, being young people immersed in a crazy, crazy world that's, the University of Alabama, that's just today's current world, things like that, right? And so, right, Cole? And so, we kind of look at this, and I always think about, when we stand on the shoulders of giants, we're also we're talking about science, we're talking about literature, we're talking about education, engineering, all this type of stuff. But we're also talking about ourselves, There's so many quotes on use one for example, right? When we were going through the papal conclave last week, one of the famous quotes was like, the people that go into the conclave thinking they're pope come out as bishops, and the people who go into the conclave knowing they're bishops come out as pope. And so like, you never think you're going to be a great person until you are a great person. And even the great people didn't acknowledge themselves as great people. And so kind of like thinking of this as like, man, in addition to standing on all of these greats, the Isaac Newtons, who did I think this quote was?
You thought it was Albert Einstein.
Yeah, the Albert Einsteins, all these people, right? We also have to think about standing on our own shoulders and how can we do better day to day? How can we do better week to week? How can we grow, learn, and become better?
Yeah, I think the humility aspect of this quote, which I didn't expect us to actually touch on until now, I think about Cole likes to mention this when he talks about the GOAT debate between Messi and Ronaldo. And then also, it's kind of in the GOAT debate between LeBron and MJ. Ronaldo and LeBron kind of have to build them. They don't have to build themselves up, but they do build themselves up in their own talks, in their own podcasts or interviews. They have to build themselves up as the GOAT. They say these things. Now, they've been incredible players, and there are great arguments for saying that they are the GOAT. but they say these things. And then you look at Messi and you look at Michael Jordan, and most of the time that you hear them talk about the GOAT debate or anything like that, they're saying, what are they saying? They're saying, I'm just thankful that I'm in the conversation with these great players, right? I know, Cole, that you've told me that before, that Messi has said that, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah.
Cole? Yep. Okay, there we go. Little response. And so
All right.
I think Cole's in research, so I'm interested to see what he says later. And so I think about the humility aspect of the quote, and that you have to be able to say, I want to learn from people in the past. I want to learn from other people. But also, as you talked about, Evan, I want to learn from myself. I want to constantly be reflecting, be looking at things and seeing them from an angle and saying, how can I learn from them? Right? We don't figure anything out by just being upset at things, wishing we didn't do things, trying to change things from the past. We learn from adjusting to what happened and to figuring out, okay, I like how that went, I can do better, or I like how it went, I can do the same thing hopefully in the future. That is how you build on the shoulders of giants. Sometimes you don't have to build something different. Sometimes you can just build something similar, but just elevate it. And so the humility aspect of being able to continue to build off of, not trying to create your own giant, but just building off of the previous giant. Cole, I'm just like, come on, what do we got over there? You're deep in research.
I think I'm deep in trying to figure out where I found this quote, because I remember listening to this, and the build up that this person had on it was really, really good, and I don't remember. It is really eating me alive. I think it was while I was in Montevallo, which meant I would have had to. Okay, I think this was during the homily from a priest at Montevallo, and he was talking about the conclave, and he was talking about like what we should be doing right now, and it's we're mourning, we should be praying for the new pope and everything, and he talked about trust, and he said, if I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. And so that's what he was referencing. And so to take this more towards, and I apologize for all our non-Catholic listeners, but this is these are some of our big beliefs and some of our big teachings. And so if you are interested and would like to listen and learn about it, feel free. But I want to talk about the topic of apostolic succession. It is a huge, huge topic among Catholicism, and basically it's the method at which Christian church is derived from the apostles through their own succession. And when did this happen? When did Christ commission these apostles? It actually happened in John chapter 20, verses 21. It says, as the Father hath sent me, I also send you. And so Jesus goes out and tells the disciples, go out and teach and make disciples of all nations and forgive sins and all of these other things. And so we have this huge commissioning, this big commissioning into discipleship, which is kind of, we're not in any way near the level of the apostles as far as brilliance and wisdom and stuff goes. But it's kind of like, in a sense, a mini, on a grand scheme of things, a huge thing of what all three of us are doing. We're all in discipleship with focus. And so, in a sense, we're called to do the same thing on a very smaller level and with a lot less authority. But, yeah. And, but.
No, I like locked in because I heard like it's the thing we're called to do. So they're like,
Evan's like, heresy check. My mom thinks, by the way, we should get a sound for that. Anytime y'all say heresy check, we should have a sound that comes up.
Do y'all know? Do you know like the buttons you can buy?
Yeah.
And like make say anything. Yeah. I think we should just have a button that says something goofy like every time, and just we all have a button. And we just like have that smash, and you just hear it in the background like, bing.
Hey, we can add whatever sounds we want into here on the side. Y'all can control this too. But yeah, and so apostolic teaching succession is a really big topic for us. But I think for me, why this quote meant so much to me, why I love this quote the second I heard it, is like I think of the Magisterium immediately. That's the first thing that comes to my head. It's the teaching authority of the church. And I'm like, wow, If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. If I have seen the faith and understood the faith to a level where I would have not understood on my own without the Catholic Church, it is because I have stood on the shoulder of the Catholic Church, right? And so, like, I was sitting there listening to the priest saying this quote, and I'm like, wow, like, I would not be where I am today without the help of the Pope, without the help of the church, without the help of my local bishops, my priests, and all of these other things. It is by standing on their shoulders that I understand more about the faith. And so that's what inspired me so much to do this quote.
Yeah, Evan, when Cole's saying this, I'm kind of being reminded of a little bit of what I said in terms of the Catholic Church, and that when we look at it and we look at the whole history of the Catholic Church, we understand that humans have made mistakes in their time as a part of the Catholic Church, whether as a bishop, as a priest, or even as a pope. They all are still human and they all still make mistakes. But if we're going to do what Cole says, which he's like referencing as standing on the shoulders of giants through the Catholic Church, we have to do what I was saying earlier. We have to look back and we have to adjust to the things, whether they're mistakes, whether they're good things, and make sure that the Catholic Church is truly being inspired by the Holy Spirit. Make sure the Magisterium is doing its job. Put me in solo mode there. And make sure that we are teaching what truly God has told us through Christ's teaching, through sacred scripture, and through the tradition. And make sure that we are not crumbling this incredible giant which Christ has created through the apostles and through the rest of the church and the apostolic successors. So just to look back and to realize God has given the authority to the apostles first, and to Peter in Matthew 16, verse 19, I will give you the keys of the kingdom, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. And this is what was passed down to, we believe, all of the popes that have come after Peter, this binding and loosing, and to just make sure that we are doing, that is incredible authority, incredible gift that Christ has given to us, and make sure that we are using it for good and that we are helping to build up the church. And most importantly, so that the Catholic people, the people that are following this authority, are not doing anything they shouldn't be doing, but are truly following the true church and the true faith that leads to Jesus Christ and leads to heaven.
Yeah, and I think a little bit of that too is that trust factor. We also have to trust. I think we talked a little bit about this when the conclave was going on, when Pope Leo was elected. But like as Catholics, we have to be called to trust that that apostolic succession exists, and that we're being good Catholics about it. And not only papally, right, but also believe that the bishops are doing how they're supposed to be doing, and trust in them, trust that there's a plan, and that also involves prayer, right? We talk so much about like pray for Pope Leo, and that's our putting our trust in him. Kind of like in a relationship, you can only trust each other by communicating and by talking and by being in this limbo with the other person, where you talk to them, you tell them how you feel, they tell you how they feel, and that's where you kind of go from. And without prayer, we don't have that trust, we don't have that connection, we don't have that bond. And then secondly, just you can't say and then do nothing, right? I think maybe not a big problem, but a big problem we have as Catholics, especially, is that we have a lot of lukewarm Catholics. And I think this kind of goes into our Shepherd of the Week, but I'll bring up another quote. Shout out Flannery O'Connor. If it's a symbol, to hell with it, right? So we talk a lot about the Eucharist and about the true presence in the Eucharist, especially. And so as Catholics, in order for us to trust the Magisterium, in order for us to trust apostolic succession, then we need to truly believe in what they teach. And we can't be lukewarm Catholics about, our big issues. And that goes for, all Christians, right? And really all faiths. If you truly believe in your faith, you should not be lukewarm about your beliefs. You should be staunch and stalwart defenders of the faith. And that goes hand in hand with trusting. You can't say you trust someone or say you believe in something and then not act like you do. Any human relationship would see right through that. And it's funny to me always how we think that God is any different than that. Than, and of course we can never lose his love, but we have to show that. We have to be an active participant in our relationship, because without that, we're just kind of floating around, drifting aimlessly.
Yeah, I'm reminded of what I'm reading. Cole, can you switch me? There we go. So I'm reading this book called Beautiful Eucharist, which is kind of a combination of these different Eucharistic reflections by people all combined into one. And there's one by Peter Kreeft. I think I'm saying that right. Do you guys know who he is?
I've heard the name.
And so it's this little story about how he basically grew in love of the Eucharist from a Muslim. And he was talking to a Muslim about the Eucharist, and the Muslim said like he didn't understand. And the Peter thought that he meant like he doesn't understand the teachings of the Eucharist, or how we believe that it's truly the body and blood, soul and divinity of Jesus. And that's not what the Muslim meant. The Muslim was saying, I don't understand how you can believe this and ever like get up from praising the Eucharist, from adoring the Eucharist. And as Evan said, like, that's, if we truly believe this, how should we be acting around the Eucharist? How should we be preparing for Mass to receive the Eucharist? And that's kind of what you reminded me of, Evan, right there. Like, if we truly believe this, like this is Jesus himself coming down from heaven at every single Mass and every single time we worship in adoration, then we should be acting a certain way that the God of the universe deserves our love, and deserves our praise.
Yeah, I really love that you brought up trust, Evan. I think this is a really, really big part of this quote, and I've noticed we're trending towards these virtues a lot recently. We're talking about a lot of virtues. We talked about hope last week, and faith a little bit. And while trusting is not a theological virtue, I think it's still encompassed among these three. And so, and even I feel like sometimes people substitute trust in for one of them. I might be wrong. Am I wrong about that? Okay. Anyways,
I don't.
but I think trust is a very important virtue as well. But the reason I say this is I'm glad that we're focusing on the theological virtues, because I think this is exactly what this is talking about. If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Right? I said it. I said right. If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants.
Right.
Every relation. Dang it, I'm going to get into this. All right. If I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Every relationship you have, whether it's with friends, a girlfriend, parents, teachers, mentors, all of these relationships should encompass each of those three theological virtues. Every single one of them. And the reason this is important is because every relationship you had, you should be growing with the other person, and they should be growing with you. Even if it's a teacher, the teacher is going to be there to guide you, and you are going to practice faith, hope, and love and trust in this teacher to help get you to understand this topic, to help get you to the final goal, to help get you to pass this class. And while every single one of these relationships is going to be on a different degree and a different level, they're all equally just as important, right? We are called to love every person. And so as we practice these things and as we understand these things, we will understand that every relationship we have, and all the ones that are extremely important to us, are going to be like us standing on the shoulders of giants, because our people around us are going to lift us up, and they're going to help bring us, like you said a while ago, like Matthew McConaughey's quote, it is going to help bring us to the person we want to be in 10 years. And it is going to continuous cycle as we go throughout our lives.
Yeah. So yeah, I think that's pretty good for our main section of the podcast on that quote. Is that good with you guys to transition?
I think we have a lot to talk about in the back half, and I think I want to cue in a few things on like our PPP and our shepherd of the week, just because I think there's a lot of connection there. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think we're gonna get back into the quote later in the back half of the episode. Don't
Yeah,
worry.
I agree. So, do you want to do it or you want me to do it? Oh, actually, hold up.
Just waiting
Sorry,
on you, Cole.
I forgot about our little thing. Which one is this? The shepherd?
Nope. Practical prayer practice.
All right, so it's the long one. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Dun. Da-da-dun. Da-da-dun. Dun. Da-da-dun. 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 Dun. Da-da-dun. The practical prayer practices of the week. Ooh, there we go. Okay.
On the
Timing.
money, that's
Pretty
crazy.
legit.
Okay.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, practical prayer practice. As I said at the beginning of the episode, Cole Bissett provided everything for this episode. And this one is from Saint Faustina, a very, very specific practical prayer practice from Saint Faustina. And it is simply, as I try to scroll to make sure I get this right, the Divine Mercy Trust Prayer. And it is simply, Jesus, I trust in you. And this is from a 1935, 1935, St. Faustina received, was it? Yes, a vision of an angel, and eventually came to have this prayer. Obviously, very simple, very specific. Yeah. What do you guys think?
You got it? You want me to go?
Was it Faustina or the children at Lourdes?
It's
Who-
Faustina.
This
Well,
is
no,
Faustina.
who like Mary asked them to consecrate Russia.
Oh, that's the kids, Lords.
Okay, cool. Cole, shoot.
Okay, I think the reason I chose this this prayer and this practice is because we have with this quote, if I have seen further, it is by standing on the shoulders of giants. Throughout the entirety of our lives, we're faced with different questions, different challenges throughout our day, and it may be in the little things, but I think it's important to remind ourselves, right, that like everything happens for a reason. And so by entering some of these things that may seem a little bit intimidating and are scary experiences that we're just starting, sometimes the best thing to do and the best thing to calm your nerves down, right? We talked about being in fear, and we talked about how it's okay to be fearful sometimes, but when you want to escape that fear and you want to start to grow in hope, the first thing you need to do is pray, and in your prayer, just simply say, Jesus, I trust in you. And I think it will dramatically change your day and your time and your experience, because you're giving your heart to God and you're letting him kind of take the wheel. And so that's why I chose this. Evan, I know you have it's not about trust, but I know you have like a prayer that you do.
I was about to, my walking meditation prayer.
Yeah.
So
What
on the
is that
inhale,
one?
it's Lord Jesus Christ on the inhale, Son of God on the exhale, and then have mercy on me on the inhale, and then a sinner on the exhale.
Okay.
So similar to just like, I use it a lot. Like I'll get into, like I'll use it as my starter to prayer, and it kind of is that calming, that centering effect. So like I'll step into adoration, and like my first 3 minutes will just be me breathing and saying that prayer. Or like when I kneel down at mass, like the first 2 minutes of me just like kneeling before mass will be that, just to center me, just to bring me into that moment. But I also use it like, if I'm walking to class or something, right? There will be certain days where I'm not wanting to use my headphones, or there are certain days where like I just get fed up with music. Like I'll be going through I don't know if this happens to you, but I'll be going through my Spotify and I'm just like, I'll start a playlist. I'm like, man, I don't want to listen to this. And like, I'll go to another playlist. I'm like, man, really don't want to listen to this either. So, I just use that one a lot. And I think it has a similar purpose to what this kind of talks about. It just reminds us kind of our place in this system, in this world. And I think it goes back to the quote a little bit of like, Jesus, I trust in you. Like it's simple, but also we're trusting in something bigger and older and better than ourselves. And when we do that, we kind of, have to throw in that comparison factor of like, I trust in you, but that also means that like, I trust that you're right. Like, I trust completely in you. I don't trust in this teaching that you may have said. Like, I'm not trusting in this one tiny, minute thing. I am trusting in you as a person, as a figure, and as an identity. And when we begin to say that, it really forces us to, like we talked about earlier, it really forces us to look and reflect at our lives and see, like, okay, if I trust in this, is it something that people would say, like, oh, yeah, I can tell that this person trusts in this, that this person believes this? Uh, you know, so I love this prayer a lot. So in addition to my meditative prayer, this is one I go to often. What are your thoughts on it, Nazario? Oh man, I keep turning the wrong direction.
Yeah, obviously, super cool prayer. I actually don't like. I love the image of divine mercy that came. Did it come from Saint Faustina? Correct during this, and it's just
Yeah,
the image of Jesus
her
with the blood and the water coming from his heart, and that's what the image says at the bottom. You have like a square with the image,
Cole,
and then
can
at
you
the
pull that
bottom,
up?
Jesus, I trust in you.
Yeah.
Very, very incredible, and just focusing on the divine mercy of our Lord Jesus. And that's kind of what you're placing your hope in as well, and your trust in. Not only is everything going to be okay, we know we have our identity in Christ, but we know what Jesus did for us. And that's kind of what you're put your trust into as well when you say that, Jesus, I trust in you. I trust in everything that you did for me. And I like that as well. And I'm not going to go into it. I thought about it at the beginning, going into the Chaplet of Divine Mercy, which also comes from this vision from St. Faustina. Well, these series of visions. But that could be for another episode because we're focusing on trust right here from this beautiful image that we have of our Lord Jesus. I trust in you. So, yeah, from St. Faustina, don't be afraid to pull up that image, meditate on the image and on the prayer, and to just pray to our Lord and place our trust in him. So thank you, St. Faustina, for that incredible prayer and for being our practical prayer practice of the week. We are going to transition. Come on, Cole. There we go. The Shepherd of the Week.
Man, being a producer over here is sure something.
Producer.
You
scared,
gotta
but
you gotta be anticipatory, Cole.
I
You
need
gotta
to
be
get him a
anticipatory.
I need to get him a
Y'all need-
soundboard.
Yeah, I need a soundboard and I need a mouse because I'm sitting here on my little
On his
touchpad scrolling
trackpad.
as fast as I can. I have like 5 screens pulled up on my computer trying to like scramble to get everything ready. Okay.
Cole, one day, this podcast is gonna be big enough where we could pay someone else to be our producer during
To
our
do
shows,
this.
and it'll be just wonderful. I don't know who that person would be, but it's gonna be great. But our Shepherd of the Week, Evan, is super hyped about our Shepherd of the Week, and it is the one and only Jonathan Roumie, who most notably plays Jesus in The Chosen, the TV show. And just what a legend, what an awesome guy to give us really one of the best images of our Lord and what he was like when he was on earth. Obviously, Jonathan Roumie is just a human being, but he has done a fantastic job of this with acting through this TV series. Evan, what would you like to say about our man, Jonathan Roumie?
Yeah, so if you think really cool, I honestly I have not seen all of The Chosen. I've watched most of season 1 and most of season 2, but 3 and
Season
4
5 dropping in June, by the way, ladies and gentlemen.
yeah, 3 and 4 I have not gone around to yet, but obviously really cool guy. Obviously really cool because he is really Catholic. So this is a Catholic guy that is playing Jesus. He's actually Catholic. And the reason, I brought up that Flannery O'Connor quote is because Jonathan Roumie's brand, like his merchandise, has a shirt that has that quote on it. If it's a symbol, to hell with it. And I think one of the coolest things about this guy's whole kind of aura, if you will, is that so often, and I've come across this a lot, so often our Protestant brothers and sisters will come up to us and say, like, oh, y'all should watch The Chosen. Like, it's such a great representation of like how Christ was and all this stuff. And I'm like, It's funny because actually the lead character believes that the true presence exists, and like that's one of his main things. So it's I always get a grin out of that. I think it's a cool thing. However, reading a little bit of his biography, I also think he's really based because he is a public speaker. So he gives kind of speeches at all these different events, including March for Life and the National Eucharistic Congress, which we held last summer. But he also hosts, and this is providential. Cole, you weren't here when we discovered this, but this is super cool. He also hosts Instagram live prayer sessions where he prays. Guess what prayer, Cole?
The trust prayer, divine mercy
No,
prayer.
it was close.
No?
There we go. He prays the Divine Mercy Chaplet
Okay.
on Instagram live, apparently pretty regularly.
That's
So
kind of cool.
yeah, that's really cool. Super based guy. He's pretty honestly a pretty good actor too. I mean, I just figured out that he's apparently in an NCIS episode, which is a series that I'm working through right now. So I'm super excited to see him. But just a really cool guy and a cool moment in history to be experiencing with such a critically acclaimed show that's gained notoriety. Because when I think about it, The Chosen in season one was kind of this. It was a YouTube series, but it was also kind of like my parents would watch it at night, and it was kind of like, oh, like this episode has like 40,000 views, right? And it was one of those things. And to now see it where it's like people are packing theaters to go see this, it's really cool. Both to say like, hey, I remember season one where we were watching it in our living room, and there was like, they're kind of doing this for 10 people, and to be here now, and it's major release in theaters over several weeks, and like a huge website with, I'm sure, hundreds of thousands of hits, where it's like counting down to when they release season 6 or season 5 in at home format. So it's a pretty cool experience, pretty cool place to be in for the faith, and I think it's really opened a lot of doors. This and the publicity that the conclave got has opened a lot of doors for people who want to look into the church and want to see Christ's love and his real presence on earth here today. Cole, what do you? I know this was your shepherd of the week, so I hate to be yapping for so long, but obviously there was something you wanted to highlight with him.
I just think when I love everything y'all have said about him. He is an awesome person and has many accomplishments. Very, very notable actor in Hollywood. But I think if we talk about Jonathan Roumie, I think the thing that I always get inspired with, especially about the actors that play Jesus, and I think Caviezel said this, it is such a privilege to be able to play Jesus. And I think sometimes both of them in interviews have said it feels wrong. Sometimes it's like, how in the world do I live up to this expectation? But the moment that broke me so much about Jonathan Roumie, and the reason I chose him, is because he was in an interview with, I don't remember what company this was, but she asked, what's the first thing you want to hear from Jesus when you get to heaven? And he looked at her and he said, "You did well." And she was like, wow, like that hit really hard. And he's like, I'm trying my very best to, like, in a sense, we're all called to be Christ-like, but he is literally portraying that on television for us. And so I think I can't imagine, and the goosebumps I'm getting right now even thinking about it is like, wow, if I played Jesus in a movie, in a series as big as The Chosen, and then went up to heaven, and Jesus looked at me and said, "You did well." I like, wow, it just gives me goosebumps all around. So I admire him a lot as a person. I actually am currently DMing him for us to see if I've been trying, boys, to we gotta have a breakout guest here at some point, and so I'm trying our best. To
Obviously,
host.
Evan, what you can say?
Speaking of Christ-like, Cole, I just that 5 minute break where I went over here, and what was really close to the camera was me ordering my shirt.
No way.
So
Oh my gosh.
it will be here in I don't know, whenever it gets here. So I
Cole.
ended up getting Brown though, brown Savannah.
Interesting.
Interesting. That was a cool color. That's the second one I was gonna go for.
Cole,
Anyway,
obviously, if Jesus said you did well to Jonathan Roumie, it would be pretty cool. But how much cooler do you think it would be if he was just standing there in front of Jonathan, just with an Oscar, just the Oscar award to just hand to him?
That would be
I think it
so
would be
awesome.
significantly cooler to be in heaven than it would be to win an Oscar for
Well,
Jonathan
an
Roumie, at least.
Oscar from what if it's like the Oscar? No, that's a little far. But like just an Oscar from
The
Jesus is
Oscar for
pretty
living
incredible.
a good life.
So, anyways, to close off with this, not only, as you said, Evan, did The Chosen like blow up, but it helped Angel Studios, who has done a lot of great things. But the Angel Studios probably wouldn't do a lot of things that did without The Chosen. It generated over $281 million in revenue, and it was actually crowd-funded for the longest time. I believe the entirety of all the 5 seasons. And then Angel Studios actually wound up making the Sound of Freedom movie, if I'm not mistaken, which was blown up 2 summers ago now, and was really brought to light the child trafficking that is going on in the world, and hopefully still people are trying to stop that and doing a lot to help with that from that movie. But my final thing is I cannot wait for season 5 from Jonathan Roumie and the whole Chosen cast, because of it will have the Lord's Supper in it. And obviously the Lord's Supper is for us Catholics, where we believe the institution of the Eucharist happened. To see that through the show, the imagery of that will be pretty sick. And then my final thing on Jonathan Roumie is, Evan and I were talking about this before the episode, when he was at the Eucharistic Congress, I believe it was in Indianapolis last summer. I watched his speech, and one of the things he did was, there's a point in the Bible where Jesus tells all of his disciples that to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must eat his flesh and drink his blood. And a lot of the disciples leave Jesus at that time, and they did not put that in Chosen. So Jonathan Roumie did this presentation of it. He was acting and did it on the stage of the Eucharistic Congress, and it is pretty darn cool. So if any of you guys get a chance to do that, and then I also think pretty cool to finish off this is when Jesus does that, the response from Peter, Jesus sees all of these disciples leaving, and he asks his apostles, where will you go? And Peter says, where else would we go? You have the words of eternal life. I believe does he say that exactly at that time? Or does he just say, where would he go? Where would we go?
I think it's like, Rabbi, teacher, where else would we go?
Yeah. So, yeah, pretty cool moment right there. Cole, are you frozen right now? No. Okay, you're good.
He's just
All right.
very still.
Yeah, so our shepherd of the week, Jonathan Roumie, and now we are going to transition into our final thoughts of this episode. You guys said you had a lot to talk about, so I will just hand it on over to y'all.
I think just with the personal prayer practice and Jonathan Roumie. No, I think just the whole big message of this episode is a lot of trust. Trust that we're being led the right direction, trust in the teaching of the church, trust in our leaders, trust in tradition. I think one of the greatest gifts that we have as Catholics, or even as Christians, right, is we have so much tradition to pull from, so much tradition to call upon. It's kind of funny. I often akin it to when what's the lady who runs Star Wars now, Caroline Kennedy,
Actually,
whatever her name is. She came into to Lucasfilm, to Star Wars, and Disney lady, and she was like, "Oh, we have no material to draw from," and everybody was kind of like, "We have 1,000 comics and 100 books and all this stuff." And I hate to relate the Catholic Church to Star Wars, but that's kind of the Catholic Church, right? Like, we have so much to draw on. We have thousands of years of writings to draw from. And so, trust in the tradition, trust in the church, trust in apostolic succession, trust in the magisterium, and then trust in God, trust that He is leading us where we're supposed to be, trust His will for us. Yeah.
Cole Bissett, final thoughts?
I, again, It really does all come down to trust. Thank you, Evan, for continuing to highlight that, because it is so important. And I think I think we've done a really good job here. The points that I really wanted to highlight were, the church's authority, humility, and trust, and all three were hit. And I think each one of us kind of got our chance to talk about each of them. So thank you guys for that and for that opportunity. I love this quote. I think it's a great model to live by. I think having that humility to allow someone else to lift you up on their shoulders really does help you in life. And so continue, all three of us, advice to ourselves, continue to allow ourselves to be on the shoulders of other people, because it will help us go so much further in our life. So yeah.
Yeah, I think we haven't talked about this at all, but I think we just need to focus on trust. We haven't talked about it yet. Need to focus on that. Don't forget. Make sure you trust. Sorry, just had to throw in a little joke right there. If you haven't been listening to the episode and you're like, oh, yeah, we need to focus on trust, listen back to the first 50 minutes because we talked about trust the whole time. And I don't really have anything else to say. Make sure you are trusting. Keep trusting. Just trust. Can we say it any more times? Trust.
Yeah.
Trust. Yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for another episode of the Lost Sheep Podcast. Trust that there is going to be another episode in a week.
Trust that you're going to go to the link in our Instagram and buy merch. And I can say that now because I'm an official sponsor. Yeah. Trust that you're going to buy merch and like and subscribe and comment on our Instagram.
And we trust that you guys are going to do that as well. And you're going to like and subscribe and share the podcast, and just let you guys know that we are here for you always. We hope this episode helped you in some way. And don't forget to trust, and God bless.